Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Prime Pediatric Podcast. I am super elated. I have a very special guest. I have Dr. Nona Djavid on today. Dr. Nona is amazing. She's been talking in chiropractic for over almost 2 years now, just ripping it up, talking about mind, money, mindsets, quantum leaps in your practice. I can't wait to dive into this with her. Dr. Nona, how are you today? This is so great you're here.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here.
Well, let's jump right into it. There's no use in holding back. Dr. Nona, can you give us some amazing background as to who you are? I know you had a heavily involved pediatric practice. You made massive leaps from a family practice into working with kids on the spectrum and an NDD practice. Can you give us some amazing background so we know exactly who you are and where you're coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I graduated, Skip, I was like, I almost immediately went into starting my own practice. There's a little backstory in there, but I won't get into it. But went into my own practice, and I just knew that I knew I wanted to be a family practice. I wanted to see the whole family, the kids, the mom, the dad, and the pregnant moms, and just wanted to be around that. And I set out to sort of create that. And through a series of events, I niched down even more into creating this family practice, but really niched down into seeing the kids on the spectrum. And truthfully, that one of the things that happened in that process and in that journey, there were multiple things that happened, and I don't know if we'll have time to get into all of them. But one was I burnt out. Two was I created a practice I couldn't get away from. Three was I hadn't followed my true calling at the time, or this thing that was like tugging at my heart all the time. But there were a series of events that happened just like they do to all of us, right? Synchronicities, callings, whatever. And they sort of pushed me and moved me in the direction that it ended up being, not only creating this part-time $1 million cash practice that I now teach, but also a really fulfilling practice that was filled with all of these kids that were on the spectrum. Watching kids go from nonverbal to verbal to telling their parents they love them for the first time. I mean, I know that you've had all these miracle stories in your practice as well, but it's all looking back now. It's like all the little pieces of breadcrumbs that kind of added up to bringing me here in this moment. But that's kind of amazing background.
Well, I think it's amazing. And part-time $1 million practice, I think is completely kick-ass. I think it's amazing. But you're talking about something that a lot of docs don't quite understand first time out in the practice is the golden handcuffs. The golden handcuffs of your practice. And what I mean by that is we literally back ourselves into a cell, shut the door, handcuff ourselves to the cell wall, and then throw the key out at the guard and say, walk away. That's literally what we do in our office. And I think that as chiropractors, we've been given this massive ability to help as many people as we possibly can. But the other side effect of it is that everybody says, give, love, serve. You need to give, you need to love, you need to serve. You need to give, you need to love, you need to serve. They beat that drum to death. The problem is that subconsciously pegs us into working ourselves to absolute death. And you hit something that I've experienced myself is burnout. Burnout sucks. What were some of the signs, like right off the bat? I think this is really important. What are some of the signs that docs need to realize early on in practice of burnout, Dr. Nona?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I could tell you the signs, but to be completely vulnerable and honest here, I don't know that if someone gave me the signs, like they were like, here's 1 through 10 signs to look out for. I was so in the thick of it that I think I would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't have any of these signs. But I think you get out of practice, and I talk to students a lot, and I talk to established doctors a lot, and you get out of practice, and the heavy, and you called it, just love, serve, and give, right? Which part of that is live your life also, or like
none of it,
right? And so I always tell these, especially chiropractic students, but also a lot of burnt out doctors, is like you really have to design or determine or have a vision for what your life is going to look like, and then sort of backtrack into what that practice is going to look like that is going to support the life that you just put out there to that is your best vision of yourself, right? Of the
Love
kind of life
that.
you want to live.
Well, I think that's a completely back-assward way of looking at it, which is the correct way of doing it. I think every student that comes out of school, they look at the place they want to go practice. They look at how they're going to do it. They don't look at the lifestyle they want to live and create that's going to give them what they want. And then how do they build a practice to give them what they want? They don't look at it the way that you look at it. And that is the way that a lot of people should be starting, correct?
Yeah, and sadly for me, and probably you too, is we didn't have the tools, and we didn't know, or maybe didn't have the right coaching or whatever. We just got out, just like a lot of chiropractors that get out right now, and you just start to look at. I want to create. For me, it was like, I want the $1 million practice. Now looking back, it's like, hey, you got that, but you also burnt out and like aged in the process. Yeah, not so good combination. And you just kind of focus on the practice, and then you do the traditional things you're told, right? Like for me, I borrowed money to go sign up for a practice management group. I like tried multiple practice management groups, and while they helped me put in the systems and make my practice successful, they were out of alignment with what I wanted to do. Right. So it became a place of lack of integrity without recognizing it. So that's what I mean. I was like in the thick of it. I was making money. I was working hard. My practice was running semi-smooth. So you don't notice it. And then all of a sudden, and this was about 3 years into practice, I look up and I'm like, I'm swimming. That dream practice I had, like I'm swimming in it. And if I go away for a week, if I travel, if I take an adventure trip or something like that, I got to come back. If I hire an associate, I got to come back and I got to work on my numbers to go back up again. And that's when I was like, not doing that anymore.
I love that. No, I love that because I know exactly how you feel. I know what it's like to look up in a 100 patient a day practice on your own, 100 patient plus a day, making over 7 figures a year in practice, and then finding out that this is exactly not what you wanted, and being completely handcuffed, having associates, still feeling handcuffed, and not being able to live what you want. And it's hard. And I would say one of the biggest things is, as a doctor, and understanding when you hit that level, is that small subconscious resentment that you're actually seeing patients. You start to actually resent them for coming in. Yeah. And that's not a fun place to be in, because that's not what we wanted, right, Dr. Nona? Like, that's not what we wanted. It's not what we signed up for. But it's being able to actually bridge that gap, create the systems to take care of the people, train the docs. And also, you have a part-time $1 million practice, which I think is awesome. I think is so cool. And how did you figure that out? How did you figure out that system to go? And it sounds to me was when you really kind of niched your practice down, which to a lot of docs would say, okay, now all of a sudden because I niched down, how do I create greatness by shrinking, which is almost impossible.
Yeah. So, so in the process of burnout, I realized one of the things that I needed to do was let go of what wasn't serving me. So I had to look back at all the systems that on the surface look like they were serving me, because people were coming in, like my practice was like running like a machine. It was fine. It was generating profits, all of that. But in what ways were those systems and ways of communication were keeping me a slave to the practice? And then another aspect of this, which you touched on, was who am I surrounded by and who do I really need to be surrounded by? So of course I love my patients. I've always loved, no matter who I've worked with, whether it was like the CrossFit dude or the little baby or everything in between. But it was like, okay, well, what do I really want to create? One of the first thing I did was, and I mentioned this at the beginning, I determined what kind of life I want to live. So it was like, all right, if I want to have this kind of life, because freedom and adventure and just like squeezing more out of life was important to me at the time, didn't have kids. And I decided I'm going to create a practice that I can walk away from, that I could go to Spain for a whole month and can come back with an associate, with a locum doctor. Like the systems are set up in such a way that I can leave, come back, and not have to overwork or you know, I don't know, like overdue and just gonna need another
Yeah.
vacation a week later.
Yeah, have to come back and work at 150% because you were gone, or 200 or 300%, see triple to quadruple the amount of patients to make up for the income, or make up for everything that was said that you didn't agree with.
Yes, exactly. And then also in that process, I met this. So I was really like learning from Tony Robbins at the time. I've had multiple mentors, but this is a long time ago. Tony Robbins was in my sort of vibrational bubble, if you would.
Yeah.
And I signed up for this things like Platinum Partners, right, with Tony Robbins. And there were all of these super successful people. Talk about circle of influence. So super successful people. One of the guys I talked to was an insurance agent. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, how is an insurance agent a billionaire? Like, how does that happen? Because I know a lot of insurance agent, if there's this potential, how come they're not doing it? Or, you know, and so he starts to tell me that the quantum leap that he made from where he was making decent money to where he is to scale his business and be able to do the things he's doing. He said, I niched down my target audience. And he said, what I did is I went after the Hispanic market. And what I even then I went after the Hispanic market that is between this range in income to this range in income, and they don't speak English, and they mainly make cash. And like he just like kept describing, and I was like, oh, I thought I had a niche. I thought that the family practice was my niche. But if you think about it in those same terms, you got the dad, you got the mom, you've got the 3-year-old, you've got the infant, you've got the teenage, like they're all their own, you know, specific niches, if you would.
They are.
Right? I mean, like, even if you look at the medical model, OB and the specialties that go into OB are wildly different than pediatric.
Yeah.
They're not the same.
I see it all the time. I have docs talk about it all the time. I want a family practice. Well, what does that mean? You know, do you want the catch-all? Because I get it. I get it. If you want all of that, that's fine. But what's going to happen is you're going to get all of that because you left it open. And if you're not prepped for all of that, you're not prepped for actually being able to pull yourself away, do the right things that actually give you the freedom that you're actually allowing your patients. And I think that's a big thing, is that as chiropractors, we do a massive thing about freeing up nervous interference in the body. Like, we know this, like we actually give the body freedom. This is what we do to allow it to function normally. This is what we do. And why the hell aren't we letting ourselves do the same thing? Why do we take care of our bodies like shit? Like, this is the truth. The worst chiropractic patient on earth is usually the chiropractor, because we're not taking care of ourselves first. We're not getting adjusted. We're not getting check it. Nice job, Skip. We're not getting checked on a weekly or even by like daily basis. We don't even know how our nervous system is actually, what frequency it's running on to even balance an adjustment. Yet we expect our patients to do the same thing. We don't keep the balance in our life that we want. We're slamming 48 ounces of coffee a day, eating sugar, going into ketoacidosis. Like, we're the ones that are doing this, yet we expect our patients to be in line and congruent with what we do. And that's really difficult. So how have you bridged that massive gap, Dr. Nona?
That was so good. I wrote it down and I'm like, that's a mic drop right there. So good.
Thanks.
I mean, so I think that it all, for me, it all came down to like really figuring out what I want in life, what chiropractic is about, which you're 100% right. Like, giving life back to people, but are you living life yourself? Are you allowing life to express in yourself? Not if you are overworking, not if you're stressed out. So really creating something that supports everything. And going back to niching down in the process, how do you avoid burnout? Even if we're just talking about niching down and or design, like creating a practice that's by design. Think about it like this. Like, I'm a mom between 35 and 45, right? I won't tell you exactly how old I am, but between 35 and 45, I got 2 little kids. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a stay-at-home mom. You know, I'm semi-active, whatever. So, and I fit into a certain demographic in terms of like economic status or where I live or whatever. Now, I have a friend who fits into the same exact demographic. So you could pick me and you could name me. I live in Newport Beach. So you could call me Newport Nancy. She wears Lululemon. She wears high heels. She goes to yoga. You know, you could describe me and you could be like, this is the niche, right? Now, I'm going to give you another mom who's actually one of my coaches inside of Part-Time $1 Million Mastermind. And she's in the same demographic. She's like, I'm brown, she's white, but I mean, come on, we're all like, we're same demographic in terms of like economic status. She's a mom of a couple of kids. She's an entrepreneur. It's like practically same person. The only difference is my kids are little. I have a 3-year-old and I have a 6.5-year-old. Her kids are teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's the additional, the psychographic of me versus the psychographic of her because her kids are older.
Yeah.
So if you ask me what's my biggest challenge in life right now, I would tell you my 3-year-old still wakes up one time a night and wakes me up. And so I have a hard time like with sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask her what her biggest challenge is she's spending a lot of time driving her kids around to different sports activities. I don't relate to that. My kids don't do sports yet because they're too little. So understanding the psychographic of the niche now determines also where I hang out. I don't hang out at the sports events, right? Where does she hang out? So it is that important. Now, if you pick me as your demographic, then you can determine where I hang out, what I do, what times I do what I do. And so you could create your marketing strategies around all of that, right?
Yeah.
Instead of shooting in the dark, like if you're going after, oh, I'm going to do family, I'm going to do, I'm going to see everybody. Then you're doing lunch and learns, you're doing dinner with the doctors, you're doing all the traditional stuff. Whereas in 2022, you can really determine this is my fit and this is exactly where she hangs out, or these are the people she hangs out with, or this is a person who has this audience as her audience, or the same as my audience, and I'm just going to go directly to that person. So you're kind of reducing the efforts. You're working smarter in some ways.
I think it's amazing. Yeah, you're working smarter. And the thing is, I hear this adage where everybody's like, work smarter, not harder. I think you have to work smart and hard at the same time to and really be a success. Like that's the truth. And you're 100% correct. Is it's finding those people of influence that you want to influence yourselves that will then influence for you. So it's like it's a myriad of influence. But the thing is like you said, with a family practice, you take one big net and you scoop into a lake and you're going to grab all different sizes of fish. And it's what fish do you want out of that net? And I know this because I've worked in a family practice for 14 years that I created, but we've incredibly niched down. We see 70% children and half of those children are under 6 months of life. Like I actually, to tell you the truth, I'm an infant practice. Like I take care of newborns and like littles. This is what we do. And they make you shine nonstop. But having that part-time. So when I hear what you do with your coaching and how you make these docs amazing, and do you work with men too, Dr. Nona, or do you work primarily with women?
No, a majority of my chiropractors inside of the mastermind are actually men.
Really? That's awesome. I would think the majority, I'm sorry, I would think the majority would be women because you're a woman and more women empowerment.
You know what? That's what I thought too. I was like, men wanting part-time, but no, we have a lot of men in there. So I think one thing that gets misunderstood about the brand is that it's part-time, like you're on the beach.
Yeah.
But I think, and that's part of it. However, I think that for a lot of chiropractors who burn out, they're looking for ways to work smarter, work less many hours. They have other passions that they might want to pursue. And, or when they hear, oh, you did that in 20 hours and collected over $1 million all in cash, I'd like to do 40 hours, do 2 million. Like, can you show me how to kind of maximize my potential? I don't necessarily need to be part-time. But yeah, majority of the chiropractors in there are men.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So what are some of the steps? I'm going to look at this and say, okay, all right. So I'm listening to this. I'm seeing this video of you, ultra, just beautiful woman. Obviously she's used her looks to get where she wants to be. Obviously she's not that intelligent. Like these are the crap that I'm going to hear from people. I know I am. And I'm going to hear like, who is this chick? She's talking about $1 million practice, all cash. But it's 100% possible. So what are the steps you've done to completely put a boot on the naysayer's mouth to make them understand how amazing like the things that you have done to get to the level you're at? What were some of the massive steps you took?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know that I've ever, I don't know that I've ever taken any actions to do anything for the naysayers. I mean, I feel like if you're doing stuff that's grand, you're gonna have haters, right? And it's like, you can either get on my train and I'll show you how to make more money, or not, or you could be a naysayer, I guess. But you know, I come from a background where I've experienced poverty. I didn't grow up in this country. I didn't speak any English when I moved to the States. So I don't have to prove myself. I've proved myself to myself, I guess.
I love it. I was hoping I would hear that answer from you because that's all I pick up on you. And is you're nothing but positivity. You're a massive ball of light. Every time I see you, see your stuff online, see you talk about subluxation, you hold this massive subluxation summit. And I love it. I absolutely love it. You're a huge ball of light, and that's what I fully expected from you. I would say the same thing. The more positive we are, the more happy we are. The more you always hear the adage of you catch more flies with honey than with sugar, right? I mean, honey than with vinegar. Well, it's the truth in success in life, right? The more positive we are, the more happy we are, the more happy we are for people around us. We just attract happy people in. And yes, we've all been through it. Actually, a lot of successful chiropractors, we've all had the crap story. We've all had the sad story. We've all had the thing where we were at the precipice of breaking, and then we made the steps to start pushing ourselves forward, whether it's burnout, bankruptcy, whatever it may be. And I think you're an amazing example of this. With part-time $1 million practice, what were some of the things that you've done now in your coaching experience to help elevate these docs? And do you work solely with chiropractors, or are you working with more business professionals as well?
Yeah. So when I started a part-time $1 million mastermind, so this is just like a collective of all kinds of different chiropractors. They come in, and I just help give the framework of what it takes to sort of create a practice that is that's the kind that supports your life, like what we talked about.
Right.
I have network doctors in there. I have pediatric doctors in there. I've got diverse, like all of it. And one of the things that I realized early on was that I could give you the systems in the group setting, for example, and you and another doc in the same similar area saying the same verbiage coming out of your mouth, like on a day one or a day two, with the same demographic of patients. One is crushing it and the other one is stuck, right? And I was like, wait, what? So it is in the systems, or is it not in the system? So there was something that was a blind spot, or it was a gap in between, and I quickly realized that. And so one of the things I started to create, and Skip, it has massively shifted the way that my chiropractors think, and therefore their practices. I mean, this other thing that I started that focuses all on mindset, all on bringing more wealth into your life, improving your health, and improving the way that you are connected to yourself, to your significant other, to your higher self. This piece that I have brought in I can't even begin to describe like the impact that it has had on the chiropractors. Now, that membership that I started that focuses on the mindset and on the vision of chiropractic, it's actually open to all entrepreneurs.
I love that. That's awesome.
It's so good and it's so cheap. I wanted it to be accessible to everybody. It's like $37 a month, and
that's cheap.
Takes out anytime. Yeah.
So when you're bridging that gap and you're talking about making this quantum leap, because that's literally what it is, and I've heard you say this over and over again, is about this quantum leap. What there is no secret sauce to it. I know that there is a system, which you've probably figured out, but everybody's looking for this magic bullet. I know there's not a magic bullet, but I do know that there's subsystems to it. So are you using gratitude? Like, what is kind of the basis or the focus of you creating this quantum leap for somebody?
Yeah. So I think that if I were to just sum it up in like the one secret sauce, or like the one foundational thing, is teaching chiropractors and entrepreneurs to step outside of the limiting frequencies of energy that they're in, and upgrade the frequency. And I don't know if like this might be sound a little woo woo, but there's a ton of science behind it. So if I were to summarize it, it would be that, to like upgrade the frequency at which you're in, because chiropractor shows up if they're in the scarcity, if there is anything, and you could be $1 million practice, and by the way, be in the scarcity mindset.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Doesn't matter where you could be a student and have it, you could be $1 million practice. If you're in this frequency, then everything that shows up in terms of your experience, your relationship with others, your health, all of those things are going to be the things that are in this frequency. So I teach chiropractors and entrepreneurs how to upgrade your frequency, so how you're showing up in the world, so that the way that the world shows up for you is different, right? Because in this frequency, you're gonna bring in so many different things, experiences, connections, relationships, than you would at the one that's down here.
Yeah, it's changing that vibration, which is exactly how cellular function works. Is they vibrate
That's it.
at homeostatic frequencies, right? So if we're all cells, if we're just this big sack of energy, which we are, a massive, amazing creation, that we vibrate at different levels with each other, and we attract people in at different frequencies. I love this. This is such great stuff. Oh man, this is great. And you're 100% correct. And I tell you what, this has been nothing but an absolute pleasure. How can my amazing listeners get a chance to work with you, Dr. Nona? How do they find you? How do they work with you? Like, what is the best way to contact you?
I think probably anywhere on social media, but on Instagram is
Yeah,
where
you're all over Instagram and I love it.
yeah. So I'm on Instagram. I'm accessible. You know, if anybody has any questions about, you know, what I do, or I don't really do any private coaching anymore, but I have the mastermind. And then I think Elevate membership, the mindset stuff we're talking about, is a really good starting point for anybody who's like intrigued at all. So they ask
So
me about it on Instagram. I could give them the information.
do you, with Elevate membership, do you have a website or anything, or
Yeah.
how can they find you on your websites?
Yeah, so the website is www.elevate, but the word elevate is kind of play on words. It's ELIVATE .me.
Nice.
Yeah, and so if they go to that link, then they'll see a little bit of information about
And
that.
that's .me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. On Instagram, what are your handles, Dr. Djavid?
It's just my first name and my last name. It's Nona, Nona, D as in David, Jav as in Victor, D as in David.
Well, I truly appreciate this. This has been awesome. What an enlightenment. If you'll come back and be a guest again, I'd really appreciate it. I would love it. I think we could tear up another 25, 30 minutes on just mindset alone. How kick butt was this? Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any further going out points from my team or for my audience at all?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like we just got started on the juicy stuff, and yeah, I would love to come back, but thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, let's tear into it. So look for Dr. Nona part 2. Trust me, I'm going to have her back on here very shortly, and we're going to have another amazing talk. So take care, everybody. Now go out there and get it done. Take care. Bye.